Customerland is a podcast about customers, how to get more of them, how to keep them, what makes them tick. We talk to the experts, the technologies, and occasionally actual people, customers, to find out what they're all about. So if you're a CX pro, a loyalty marketer, a brand owner, an agency planner, if you're a CRM and personalization geek, if you're a customer service, CSAT, NPS nerd, you finally have a home. I'm Mike Giambattista. Welcome to Customerland. Jesse Murray, RightPoint's SVP of Employee Experience, along with Tom Quish, SVP of Customer Experience at RightPoint. We're picking up on a conversation that we had, a robust conversation at NRF. Wanted to talk about what it takes to make enterprise CX happen, as well as EX, if we can lump those two together for this part of the conversation, without offending anybody.
No, absolutely. I mean, EX is the internal version of CX, so they're not really disconnected from each other as much as I think the conversations might lend it to be. I'll start with executive buy-in on the value of CX investments for $100. I think this area, on the EX side, I'm always arguing about ROI, why investing in employees, what have you. It was surprising to me when I was talking to Tom, when we were at CX North America last year, how open the conversation is of whether CX is valued. From the EX perspective, CX is the easier to value portion of that discussion because it's typically tied to revenue. Or at least my perception was that it would have been tied to revenue or a business outcome. Tom, I think you can probably share that maybe isn't always the case. And I think making sure that we have alignment on that value story, why CX matters, what it's doing for the business, why EX matters the same way. I think that's really the big one for me.
So are you saying that at CX North America last year, there was still some dispute as the value of CX? Is that
there were a couple of topics there. One of the more recent conferences, I forget the one, but it was the end of last year. Same thing, like how do you value CX? Forrester still publishing, like how do you determine the value of CX? So I think that's still out there. I don't think we put that to bed on saying what the value of CX is and why.
So is it just, I'm just curious, were those conversations or comments just a function of the metrics we use, or was it more to do with like, why should we bother with CX at all?
I don't know that it was the metrics as much as I think it was a misunderstanding as to why those investments weren't realized in the ROI.
Interesting.
I think one of the other things we talked about at NRF is like, what's a critical technology? It really doesn't come down to the technology. It comes down to whether you realize the value of any of those technologies. And I think the interesting thing about kind of EX and CX conversationally being separate is one of the reasons why we see a lack of CX ROI realization. You can buy any CX platform, technology, solution that you want. If you don't empower your employees to use that technology or solution, then you're not going to get the value. And I think that's probably where the issue is. It's not necessarily like there isn't an understanding of how to measure CX ROI. It's that they're not getting the ROI of their CX investments. I think that might be where that challenge is.
I don't know, maybe changing the topic slightly, but still kind of tangentially on topic in some ways. Jesse and I met with a handful of CX leaders, actually just so happened to be last night over like a wine tasting type of event. And it was interesting. One of the questions that we, opened up to the group around was the idea of, if you could describe your CX for your organization in one word, what would it be? And like, I have copious notes, but like, generally, the sentiment was fragmented, disconnected, spotty, or in the process of like transitioning or transformation. So, these are big, corporations who have, loyal customer bases that still feel like, just internally, their efforts have been, siloed or fragmented in some ways. They feel like in certain aspects, there are measurable and trackable elements of the customer experience that they can, provide that ROI story around. And then there's other areas where they haven't gone as far on implementing programs and practices to actually enhance or optimize that customer experience, or don't have the tagging involved to be able to track the return. So it's interesting. I think there's everybody's on their own journey as an organization, and I think again, even talking to these different groups across different industries, the general sentiment was, hey, we're spending a lot of time and energy doing these things. We've invested in these technologies. We've tried out different solutions and different ways of working, and we still feel like our customer experience is spotty or disconnected. So to me, I think what it comes down to is that on the employee side, that ability for leaders to come together. So the established partnerships between the CXO, the CMO, the CIO, COO, CFO, like all the things that we talked about at NRF. It's those folks coming together and kind of aligning on that holistic strategy to kind of diffuse some of those silos that have been, cropping up in those organizations, and really sort of sharing that idea of customer experience across the organization. And I think, when everybody feels like they're somehow sharing an ownership of that customer's experience on the employee side, I think, those are the organizations that you see celebrated for having tremendous CX by, customers themselves.
You've just prompted another 30 questions, which is going to fully derail this conversation.
Sorry.
No, it's I think it's all really, really rich stuff to be talking about. And I don't want to leave the comment that that you made, Jesse, a moment ago, that if there is the key to the success of a CX EX effort, it's executive sponsorship, because that can look like a lot of different things. I was talking to one practitioner, fairly well-known guy in the space, who said that he has walked away from projects, fairly large ones, because it wasn't the CEO who was behind it. I mean, there's one thing to endorse something by signing your name on the bottom line of the initiative, but there's another one where it's an enthusiastic kind of, let's get the team on board and let's everybody do this thing. And that seemed to be what he was saying, is like, it just takes that kind of team enthusiasm to pull this off, because, well, we all know, because there are lots of reasons. It's complicated. ROI tends to be longer term, harder to track, and all those kinds of things. So, and there's always somebody trying to sell you technology to solve it.
I think one of the things that jumps out at me there, CEO, I think you'd asked the question at NRF, like, what's a predictor of success with CX and EX? Visionary CEO or visionary CXO. And I say that because one particularly visionary CXO that we talked about yesterday, I want to get his words right here. We cannot have great customer experience without great employee experience, period. Right. And it takes that level of executive buy-in. There's an energy behind there. There's a mission behind
really
that.
is.
Right. And so your teams will rally behind that type of vision. And I agree. Visionary CEO, probably the easiest indicator of success of any reasonable scale transformation, because ROI does take a while, and these things are hard, and there's a lot of technology issues in the way, right? And there's a lot of data issues in the way. It takes time to do that, and it does take that purpose. And I think I can't agree with that more.
It's unfortunate that you really don't find out up front how much of a visionary your CEO is until you're kind of deep into the conversation. And in fact, that's what this same person was kind of lamenting, is that, they're in full pitch mode when it becomes clear that the CEO is not really fully bought in, and they kind of pack up and leave. Or, you have to get fairly deep into a conversation before you really understand, how enthusiastic the C-suite really is about stuff like this. So there doesn't seem to be some sort of like public facing metric you can look at. It's almost a personality driven thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also a prioritization thing, right? What level of importance is this? Is it top 3 initiatives this year? Is it top 25 initiatives this year? All right. That'll tell you a lot about right? How important and how critical it is, and how much energy the organization is going to be able to put behind it. And I think that's that much more than what technology they have, or do they have the right skill sets, or anything like that. That much more predictive of success or failure.
I don't know if I mentioned this at NRF, but and if I did and it's old news, just kind of wave me off here. But we did a study about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago at this point, to try and gauge the CX seriousness from the Fortune 50. And the way we did it was we looked at their 10Qs and 10Ks over the past 12 months, looking for clues as to whether they have a CXO, whether they've promoted somebody into the CXO position or something similar, whether whether the term CX or customer experience even makes it into the narrative for them. And, yeah, that's kind of a squishy metric. This is not a hard metric at all, but we're just looking for some indicator, because everybody likes to say they're customer centric, and you've got some CX effort on some level, but do you really, or is it just another X initiative? And what we found out was, and it was right close to 10% of the Fortune 50 had something they were putting out publicly that kind of their stake in the ground. We're going for an overhaul, if you will, of customer experience. And along with that, there were a few mentions of employee experience. But that was really telling to me, because the Fortune 50, that meant that if my number's right, that 5 companies out of the 50 were really all about it, and the other 45 were either not mentioning at all, or it was kind of just the marketing
Window
buzz
dressing.
du jour. Yeah, right. So I don't know what your experiences are, if you think that holds true for the people you talk to.
Yeah, I think for the clients that we work with, in some cases we're brought in via like an employee experience conundrum that they're facing, and then we expose opportunity to have that employee experience help support a broader customer experience initiative. In other cases, it's it's fully blown sort of, hey, we need help in support of our customer experience. How can you help sort of identify the pain points and the opportunity areas, and help us sort of optimize, or in some cases reinvent our customer experience. So it depends on who we're talking to and where they are on their sort of organizational journey. But yeah, I mean, I'd say largely the focus of our clients, or the clients that come to us, is that they realize that there is a benefit in investing in customer experience, and they are trying to reap that benefit. Again, in some cases, so maybe in one example where, say it's a marketing experience that we're helping to craft and launch, part of that, while it has a customer facing sort of outcome and output, I think part of that is considering, like, what is the marketing team's role in sort of populating this experience, and how do we ensure that their job is easier, their ability to connect and engage with their customers is ultimately simpler, so that they can create a better end customer experience for their target audiences. So I think largely we see both sides of that coin coming to bear in terms of the conversations that we're having with our clients.
This episode of Customer Land is sponsored by Verint, the customer engagement company. Verint helps the world's most iconic brands build enduring customer relationships by connecting work, data, and experiences across the enterprise. Verint has conducted research over the past 3 years and found that a chasm exists between what organizations know they need to do to meet rising customer expectations and the resources they have to actually do it. It's called the engagement capacity gap. To help bridge that gap, Verint empowers businesses to effectively listen to customers, analyze both strategic and individual level data, act to engage customers, and deliver differentiated experiences at scale. Ready to expand what's possible and close the engagement capacity gap at your business? Learn more at verint.com. That's VERINT.com.
And it reminds me of one of the conversations we had at NRF. So I'm a technologist by trade, but most of our success doesn't really come from tech. It comes from application of tech to a person, very specifically. NRF was a lot of tech. And I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of the experience that we see all over the place is buy this tech will solve your problem. Buy this tech will solve your problem. It's not about that. Frankly, most of our customers own plenty of tech, and frankly, too much of it. And they never really took the time to kind of align the tech to user needs. And they also don't oftentimes integrate the tech with other tech.
Right.
So the integration that we find, and this is actually probably one of those indicators of inability to execute a large EX/CX transformation. If your employees are your systems integration layer, then you're not really going to be able to transform a lot. They're working at the behest of the tools instead of the other way around, and that almost always shuts things down. In the conversation last night, data was a common theme. All these systems, none of which talk to each other. So if you wanted to follow a customer all the way through their systems, customer was known by this in one system, customer is known by this in another system, and then you flip it to the employee side and the exact same thing. All these different systems of disconnected data. Only the people that do the work can go through, and what are they doing then? Not providing customer experience.
Right.
Not investing in better customer service. They're just struggling with technology, and it is. In my career, probably one of the most frustrating things is that we just haven't put to bed making our tech stacks work with each other properly, or even moderately. And so I'll stay off my soapbox here, but I think every time I go to a conference and I look at 700 booths of Buy My Tech, I'm reminded why we are in the situation we often are.
Well, I have to walk gingerly here because those tech people keep our lights on here. So
I mean, I do love some tech too. I am a technologist.
But for the record, I love tech too. But I remember, I think it was a statement that you made, Jesse. I think it was you. Like, tech will not solve your CX problem. I think it was that point blank. And there's a lot to be said there. There's a lot I mean, frankly, you could make that same case about tech is not going to solve your marketing problems. Tech is not going to solve your HR problems. So tech, it just isn't that way. And that kind of points to the thing that I'm really hoping to open up with both of you, which is that so much of what RightPoint does, and you two specifically, seems to be about change management at a corporate level, at a cultural level. And that's ridiculously hard to implement. I mean, that's just tough. You've got culture that will resist it. You've got protectionist borders. You've got the inbuilt silos. You've got all kinds of motivations and KPIs and bonuses that say they don't want to change. And you're saying, well, we need to if we're going to get there. And by the way, I'll show you an ROI down the line somewhere. I'm simplifying. But how do you, as two people who lead these charges, how do you do that?
You want to take that first, Tom, or you want me to jump?
Go ahead, and I'll riff off of what you say.
So the first thing that we go is to look to whether you have an understanding of your customers and your employees first. Have you done the analysis to understand who they are and what their motivations are? Do you know how they spend their day? When a customer comes in, do you know what happens internally? Do you know what kind of processes that kicks off? Classically, service design, journey mapping, personas. We're pretty big about mapping value into that journey, so you can see when this challenge happens, you're seeing a decrease in customer NPS. So address and prioritize investing in this place. But it's really about shining light on what a lot of places don't have. They don't have a cohesive journey. Oftentimes you'll see a customer lifecycle journey. You'll see an employee lifecycle journey, as if they are two disconnected things. And they're really not. Right? Like, you have to go deep into all the way into operations of a customer journey map to really understand what's happening that's causing their frustration. It very well could be a systems issue from a vendor, right? That you're there, but oftentimes we just don't see that visibility. So I think for me, it's start with an understanding of customers and employees and see if we're rooted in that first. And then we can suss out your pain points and your technologies and process changes and data that goes around that.
Yeah, I'd say, and one of the things that we had talked about with an individual who sort of sat within kind of a merge role within EX and CX, even in our recent conversations, one of the things that we had talked about was, yeah, you might have some sense of what the customer's journey is, or pockets of understanding of, different areas of opportunity. But overlaying that with the employee experience and how your employees have to kind of get through their days and do their, work their shifts or perform their tasks. Sometimes that allows for, a more unique perspective on how you can better the customer experience by, again, solving some of those employee related experience issues. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Jesse. There's that sort of understanding that, understanding happens in pockets sometimes. And again, to get back to the fragmented sort of CX thought in terms of some of the responses that we got in our conversation just the other day, a lot of that was sort of, yeah, we're doing it in pieces and pockets, or we have this area of the journey mapped out really clearly, but then other areas are, a little bit blind to us. And so it's just driving that focus within the organization to really flesh out those more complete and holistic journeys that showcase sort of where employee experience and CX start to intersect, and how you can better both sides in that way.
So I'm just curious. I'm sorry, just real quick. When you're at that point in a conversation with one of your clients, you've done kind of the first level of digging to, I'm going to fake it and call it a SWOT analysis of where the problems are, where the opportunities are. Is that an executive level presentation, or by that time are you down within the divisions and the kind of upper, maybe middle management people that are actually pulling the levers and pushing the buttons on this?
Which is interesting. Ideally, we started at the executive level conversation. We definitely are going to go down into the organization and gather all this data, and then you're going to pull back up into an executive level conversation, because at the end of the day, no matter who you're talking to, there's going to be a larger list of pain points than you are going to have budget or time to resolve.
Yeah.
And we have to get that back up into a business outcome lens and a prioritization discussion. It is, what is most impactful? Is it higher employee retention? Is it more revenue? But you have to put that business lens over top of the pain points and run through that prioritization exercise to figure out where should we be making changes soonest. I think we've all just accumulated a lot of experience debt over the years, because we have all these little initiatives, all oftentimes broken up from each other, or what was it? Fragmented was the word of the day yesterday, Tom. They're fragmented, and we have to pay that off now. And I think that's frankly why it's so hard. Because you if you look at everything that's broken, then you're like, I don't know where to start. But
Right.
if you take a business outcome lens to it and prioritize and say, what are we going to do? Let's get this part better, and it made this better, and this is the value that we got, and take that approach, then you can kind of work your way through that.